Metropolitans, things may be good over in Queens, but something is not good with Jeff McNeil. It's official. He has a fractured wrist. It's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks, but will he be able to return to help the team this season? That's what we're breaking down on this edition of Mets Digest. What's going on, everybody? Flobo Boyce here, and I understand there are so many cool things happening in Queens, so many cool things happening with the team. I'm so glad to be part of that, much like how you are part of this. Before we get into today's episode, breaking down that Jeff McNeil injury, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button, make sure you are in the know when new content drops. Myself, alongside Michael D'Angelo, we want to give you the best content possible. Make sure you're in the know and don't be part of that 76.8% who just watches content and moves on. And you know what? I'm not going to belabor the point. Let's get into it. Jeff McNeil. I mean, this guy here was a little bit of resurgence after having a slow start this season, and to be honest with you, a little bit of last season as well. But during the Cincinnati Reds series, got injured, took a ball off the wrist, thought he could play through it, but just wasn't the case. And that, my friends, is pretty sad. And well, I wanted to show you what he was going through when it was happening, because it looks like he didn't even realize how serious the injury is. This is told to Mark Sanchez over at the New York Post. McNeil's padded right wrist was struck by a 74-mile-per-hour curveball from Brandon Williamson, and he waved away the Mets trading staff because it didn't hurt that bad at all. McNeil. But the wrist began to swell. He went to the indoor cage and tried to swing, and the turning over motion proving irritating. McNeil was pulled from the game and sent for an MRI exam that revealed a small fracture. Now, you can sit here and try to postulate what would happen if he took himself out of the game instantly, but it's kind of interesting. The ball itself, 74 miles per hour, it's hard, but it's not super hard. McNeil thought he can play through it, got pulled to the MRI, and it's official. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. That is critical as the Mets are trying to flirt with this whole wild card thing. As I record this, we're in sole position of the third wild card spot ahead of Atlanta, with even the Diamondbacks and the Padres not keeping up their post All-Star game pace. There is a possibility of us being able to gain more ground, and you want to be able to see who is going to be in the mix when it comes to that. We kind of thought Jeff McNeil was on his bit of a renaissance, the whole happy Jeff. In fact, this here puts it in context. This comes from the Associated Press. McNeil led the major leagues with a 326 average back in 2022. That was the batting champ days, but hit just 238 in 129 games this year. He was benched for several days in June. This also includes the London series, the big showcase series where international fans were going to see the Mets on a stage not common, so you want to have your best players out there. McNeil was benched during that. He was benched in June and was hitting 216 at the All-Star break. But then batted 289 with 7 homers and 20 RBIs in his final 41 games. So if you're following along, Jeff McNeil, batting champ. Last year, half of this year, not good. Calls for him to be shipped up and shipped out. But now, on his resurgence, the whole happy Jeff era has himself a situation where he's on the shelf. So 4 to 6 weeks. That is the prognosis for that kind of wrist fracture. And the idea, we were understanding that if he's able to come back to help the team would have to be deep into a playoff run. And so if we don't get the wild card, if we do fall out of favor there, its season's pretty much over. Carlos Mendoza, the manager, said as much. But if there's a possibility to be on a postseason roster, you would have an option with him right here. So real quick about the stats. We all know the big deal. But the thing is, with Jeff McNeil out, this does answer or solve some issues in the short term. 1, the overcrowded outfield, and 2, who's your number one choice over in the infield. And we saw this today. Saturday was a 4-0 game. The Mets won. Took us a long time to get the bat started, but it was Jeff McNeil's replacement, Jose Iglesias, the best batting average on the team, really showing some of his defensive flashes as well. A bit more dexterity working alongside Francisco Lindor. So Jose Iglesias, Mr. OMG himself, basically slotted in with McNeil gone. He's done it before when McNeil was benched, and shows that he can be the everyday A option. As of this recording, we don't really know what the roster is going to shake out as we get into the last couple of weeks, whether or not they're going to take on an extra middle infielder or whether they're going to take on another option on the outfield like we did with DJ Stewart when JD Martinez was out on paternity leave. But Jose Iglesias can pretty much hold us down. I think him and Francisco Lindor are working on a kind of a sync that you never saw with McNeil and Lindor. Not knocking either men. I think they worked on it. I think they were a lot better suited than they were during the Raccoon year. But I just feel like there's another level when it comes to that. So, Scooter, that's a different nickname. Squirrel, Magic Squirrel, Flying Squirrel is out for a month, 6 weeks. What moves do you make? Do you try to tread water and hopefully do a deep playoff run with an idea of maybe he can come back to return? I wouldn't say so. I like a little bit of the resurgence here, but you got to be able to have someone who's really to battle for you now. Iglesias will slot in perfectly. The outfield, which is where McNeil played, sometimes will have a lot of options as well, with Winker showing him his bit of a hot streak alongside Bader, who's trying to get out of a slump. We saw his home run this weekend in that Red Series as well. So what I'm trying to say is the team is fine, which is something weird to say, because had this been May, we'd have been like, oh man, we're losing McNeil. What are we going to do? That's our former batting champion. But the team has been crafted so deep by these abilities that you can't see on the surface. I'm not sure if this is going to be studied, but for the first time in a long time, when people say the next man up when it comes to Queens, we actually can do it. We actually can do it, and do it with a soundtrack. Oh my God. Hey, what's your thoughts on the McNeil injury? I'm dying to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below. I do read the comments, mostly positive, sometimes negative, but I read them all because I love each and every single one of you. My name is Flobo Boyce. I'm alongside Mike D'Angelo here at Mets Digest. It is a fantastic time to be a Mets fan. So I got to say, as always, it's LGM to the bitter end.